must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
To the sky from the bottom.
I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the crying in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being, God damn it. My life has value.
This is all I know.
I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly.
Oh, is that what it is? Well, I don't want you to buy like a little bit in your back number. He'll leave you alone. Yeah.
Good works are done in light, so what's done in darkness needs to be brought to light. And it's up to us, citizen media, to be out here and expose it.
We will stand and fight. Seeking answers to age-old questions. Deciphering the world painted around you by the mainstream media. This is the Kev Baker Show. And now, here is your host, Kev Baker.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. That's right, everyone. It's that time of day again. I'm your host, Kev Baker. And I'm going to be with you for the next 2 hours of radio right here on your number one network, Truth Frequency Radio, www.tfrlive.com. Now, I hope you're all looking forward to what again is going to be an absolutely brilliant show right here on the network tonight. I'm going to be joined by the brilliant, the world-renowned exorcist, deliverance minister, the spiritual warrior himself, Mr. Bill Bean, will be here live with me in 45 minutes' time. That's right, folks. I've really, really grown to love Bill over the time he's been coming on to the show, and we often speak about spiritual warfare that's raging all around us. And here's one guy, I mean, he's like a crack troop. He's really out there on the front line. He's fighting evil on a daily basis, and I think it's always good, at least once a month, to catch up with Bill, and in particular this month, because Bill has just released his 4th book. That's right, folks, he's got 4 books out, and the latest one of which is called The Connection, and we'll be getting into all of that later on tonight. Now then, for those who will be, or sorry, I just had a message there. I was telling people that Johnny Whistles will be on the show tonight. And he's just messaged me there. Sorry about this, folks. But he's slept in today. He's obviously still recovering. But thankfully, he's now been in touch because I hadn't actually touched base with John today. I was getting a bit concerned about him. He's messaged there and it says he will be here on time. I don't think Johnny's realised the time right now, but that's okay because I've got plenty for us to get into before Bill gets here, and I'm really looking forward to Johnny Whistles turning up as the show goes on as well. But before we get there, I've got a massive show lining up, everyone. Absolutely massive. And next week it's going to be another big week right here on the Kev Baker Show because Duncan Campbell, he's actually in the chat room tonight. He'll be here live with me next Tuesday. And then on Thursday, the 8th of February. Now, we've got a first-time guest coming onto the show. I'm very excited about this because I really want this individual to relay his information to all of you great people out there. And I'm going to be joined by somebody from the world of black projects. Yes, that's right, folks. I'm going to have Black Ops contractor Mr. Cody Snodgrass on the show on Thursday night, on the 8th, a week today, and the 8th of February, that is. He's going to be coming on to talk to us all about what goes on inside the inside jobs. That's right, everyone. This is a guy with first-hand knowledge of what happens when these false flags fly. Oklahoma City being one of the projects that he speaks extensively about. And I think we'll all benefit from listening to Cody when he comes on the show here on Thursday, a week tonight, because this man has got some absolutely brilliant information that you're not going to hear anywhere else. And very, very brave of Cody to be speaking out. It's one thing people like me putting on a show like this where we can host individuals, whistleblowers of the ilk of Cody Snodgrass, but, you know, the real bravery, the real kudos goes to Cody himself for coming out and talking about this kind of thing and talking about upcoming shows even more immediately on the radar. Tomorrow night on the Anthony Patch Show, we're going to be joined by Sean from the SGT Report. Now, I know most of the listeners here have checked out SGT Report over on YouTube over the years. Sean does some absolutely brilliant work, and it'll be an honour to be co-hosting with Anthony Patch tomorrow night while we have Sean on for the first hour of the show. And speaking of my good friend, Mr. Patch, it's the first of the month, and that means only one thing. The new Entangled magazine is out for all of your attention right now. I'll drop a link in the chat room as the show progresses, but yours truly here, done the front cover for this month's Entangled. It is filled cover to cover with amazing articles, amazing information that supports and backs up everything myself and Anthony cover during our live shows during the week. I really urge you to check that out. So with all of that out the way, let's get into this. Because just last week on the Anthony Patch Show, we were joined by the amazing L.A. Marzulli. And when you look at some of the characters that do the rounds on the research kind of tour, the speaking kind of circuit, L.A. Marzulli, he stands out because he's just so bubbly, so energetic, so optimistic. And I find him a really intoxicating character. I really do. I love listening to him. And of course, tomorrow is going to be a very big day for L.A. and his research team, because they will be having a press conference at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, where they will be revealing the DNA results from their investigation into the elongated skulls of Peru. Now, listening to L.A. speaking about this the other night, it was absolutely fascinating. And we were talking about the fact that literally we're talking about opening a brand new chapter in human history. And when we think back into antiquity and that ancient world, how much do we really know, folks? Come on, seriously. How much of what we think we know about the past, places like Egypt, Atlantis, things like that, how much do we really honestly know factually? Because during our childhoods, being educated in the schooling system, we have been sold a false bill of goods. We've been told a lie. Everything we think we know has been based on a lie. And you know, the obfuscation of the true history of mankind is something that this New World Order, the Illuminati, the Cabal, they seem determined to hide that from us humans, and it's part of our story. So I'm really keen to find out tomorrow the actual results of these DNA tests that LA will be publishing. And the work that he's put in to actually get this far, it can only be commended. It really, really can. He's already confirmed on the show last week that these skulls are structurally different from human skulls, meaning we're not looking at some kind of binding. He also told us there was morphological differences between the human skull and the elongated skulls as well. Now, we couldn't go into the DNA information because that would have kind of spoiled the grand reveal tomorrow. But what we're looking at here is something very, very different indeed. Are we looking at some kind of alien species? Some kind of subspecies? Who honestly knows what is going on here? But you know, something else I found today that ties in with all of this, and that's the fact that when we're talking about this ancient world and something that could be connected directly to these elongated skulls, is the fact that the story of Atlantis. That's right, I mentioned Atlantis a minute ago, folks, and Atlantis is back in the news. Because, get this, a headline coming from a paper that I really don't like to cite too often, but in this case we will do. The headline reads from the Express, Atlantis found, an 8.5-mile pyramid discovered at the bottom of the ocean. That's right, folks. I mean, we talk about pyramids all the time right here on the Kev Baker Show, but an 8.5-mile pyramid discovered at the bottom of the ocean? Well, to talk to us about this, we're going to listen to my good friend, Mr. Joe Joseph, because he's been talking about this over on the Daily Sheeple. So let's get a load of what Joe has to say about this new 8.5-mile wide pyramid. Take a listen to this.
Hey everybody, Joe Joseph here for thedailysheeple.com, and this is your news shot. Going to the Express in the UK, they ask, has Atlantis been found? Because an 8.5-mile pyramid has been discovered at the bottom of the ocean. And they ask a question. Could this bizarre object, described as a giant ancient pyramid and found at the bottom of the sea, be a clue to the site of the mythological city of Atlantis? Let me stop there for a second and talk about Atlantis a little bit, because I think it's kind of important. We find pyramids all over the world. They're here in America. They're over in Europe. They're down in Antarctica. They're in Africa. Hell, they're in the ocean. These things, an empire of the past. A lot of people look to Atlantis as being a city. But Atlantis wasn't just a city. Atlantis was an empire. A world-dominating empire at that. The first recorded seafaring empire. Now, for those that look at the Bible as a historically accurate document, Atlantis existed pre-flood, which is why you see a lot of these pyramids and megalithic structures underwater, because Atlantis, when they had their cities, they were basically coastal cities because they were a seafaring people. And interestingly enough, Atlantis was founded by one of the Titans, Atlas. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, come on, that's just a myth. If you look at the Bible as a historically accurate document, it talks about those that from heaven to earth fell, the fallen ones, the watchers. You take a look at what they talk about that, and then the times, what it was like in the antediluvian age. And it was like Lord of the Rings. It literally was. And you had giants that walked the earth in those days. We've seen evidence of giant skeletons all throughout, now basically every continent. But more importantly, you had Atlas and these titans that had knowledge that was passed down to human beings. And one of Atlas's biggest things was, that's where we get the term Atlas from, because he had unbelievable mapping capability. He was able to map out things as if, and I say as if, but he could see it from above, like from space. So obviously they had some capability there. Also, the Aztecs and the Mayans spoke of Atl, that they came from Atl or Atlas, looking as if they are descendants of Atlanteans. So there's a lot to learn from mythology, because mythology, there's always a level of truth built into it, and basically it's word of mouth. It starts out as a true story, but by the time word of mouth spreads, the story goes, changes languages, there's variations, there's subtle changes over time. It morphs into something different. But when you weed through all of that, you always find nuggets of truth. And the nuggets of truth here is Atlantis wasn't just a city. Atlantis was an empire. And Atlantis had many cities all over the world where they had pyramids, where they had megalithic structures. You can find plenty of evidence on this. And so finding a pyramid off the coast of Mexico shouldn't be a surprise to anybody because they're all over the place. I think what's a bigger surprise to people is the fact that life was so different thousands of years ago on this planet. And we've been sold this idea that it was just a bunch of cavemen and Neanderthals that were running around with, primitive improvised stone tools and things like that, when the evidence and the archaeology of the past just tells a totally different story. So when I see that there's an 8.5-mile pyramid discovered at the bottom of the ocean, I really don't think it's Atlantis being found. Could be a part of Atlantis, but it certainly tells you that we have been sold a different history and a different timeline of events than what has actually occurred. So when everybody talks about, oh, yes, the hidden knowledge hidden in the Vatican and everything else, the real hidden knowledge, the real story is what was life like before that cataclysmic event that changed and altered life as we know it on Earth. We know that, like I said, if you use the Bible, it says, as was in the days of Noah, pre-Diluvian, antediluvian age, so will it be in the coming, when the Son of Man comes, when Jesus returns. If you take a look at what life was like, if you actually look at the evidence, and then you look and see what life was like, they had cutting-edge technology. It may not be the same or manifest itself the same way, but they had cutting-edge technology. They had building capability that we cannot duplicate today. There were different species. There were different intelligent life that walked this planet. L.A. Marzulli is just going to release the DNA results of the elongated skulls down in South America. And what you come to find out is these skulls are not human. It's not human DNA. So what is it? If it's not human, then what do we call it? Was it a race of people that lived on this planet before that cataclysmic event? Or did they come afterwards? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. All I know is that there is plenty of evidence to show that intelligent beings existed on this planet. So when you get that real hard evidence, is it all too far-fetched to think that we may have found a city or outpost of Atlantis, the bottom of the ocean off the coast of Mexico? I don't think so. So check this article out. There's a video associated with it. It'll be in the description box below. And open your mind to other alternatives. That's the one thing that, in my journey, I had to do to really get to the bottom of certain things is I had to take myself wherever the truth took me, based on my life experience, based on the whole swath of my research that I've done over the course of time. And I can tell you that what we've been sold as mainstream history is not the history of the earth at all. And we need to come to grips that there is a vast conspiracy afoot to keep that history away from you, because if you understood it and if you knew it, it would give you a totally different worldview. It would give you a totally different frame of reference. You would see the world through a different, through a different lens, filter. And that's the one thing that I find most unbelievable, was how the control freaks were able to take history and totally and completely alter it in such a short period of time. So again, check out this article and do a little research in Atlantis. There's some great documentaries out there. UFO TV has some wonderful documentaries on YouTube on Atlantis. So check it out. I'm Joe Joseph. This was thedailysheeple.com's News Shot. Feel free to comment below. Visit our...
That's right, folks. That was my good friend, Joe Joseph. And, you know, he had a lot to say there about this find, this potential find of an 8.5 mile wide pyramid. And like Joe says, and I have to agree with him, should we even be surprised if this does turn out to be some kind of pyramid? And even if it doesn't turn out to be a pyramid, all we have to do is look at the various continents around the world to see that there was something far, far, far different going on in the ancient, far ancient past than any of us have ever been told about before. Think of what we were told about in school about history. And then think about some of the stuff you hear us covering on Freaky Friday, and shows like this and other shows across this network and the plethora of alternative networks out there. You know, Joe mentioned seeing the world through a different lens, and I honestly do appreciate the fact that you listeners out there, myself and the other hosts here on the network, we're definitely one step ahead of the rest because we do have that look through a totally different lens at what's gone on. And like I was saying, when you look at the pyramids around the world, we shouldn't be surprised if some 8.5 mile wide one turns up under the ocean off the coast of Mexico. Because you can look all around the planet. We often talk about the ones in Egypt, no much fun referencing them anymore. We went to China, where we found lots of pyramids there as well. There's even the Bosnian pyramid. Now, that's a highly controversial one. I really like the work that's been done there. We could be looking at one of the most massive pyramid complexes on the planet. And it's been sitting there in front of everyone, in front of people's eyes for years, only people didn't see it. However, there's one country that has even more pyramids than Egypt. And I think all of these countries that do have the pyramids, I think that's almost like a calling card. A forensic fingerprint from the past to tell us that there was a highly advanced global civilization. And Atlantis, it wasn't just one place. Like Joe said, it was a global kind of civilization, high technology. And Egypt, one of its outposts, Bosnia as well with the pyramids, China too, South America, and also Sudan. Because I found out, to my surprise today, that Sudan has more pyramids than Egypt. That's right, folks. It says here that ever since we were young, all we have known are pyramids from Egypt. The rightful owners of these spectacular architectural structures are Egyptians. Well, Sudan has more pyramids than Egypt, except Sudan's pyramids are steeper and smaller than those of ancient Egypt. And the area of the Nile Valley known as Nubia, which lies within present-day Sudan, was home to 3 Kushite kingdoms during antiquity. The first had its capital at Kerma, 2600 to 1520 BC. The second was centred at Napata, 1000 to 300 BC, and the last kingdom was based around Meroe, 300 BC to AD 300. Now, Kerma was Nubia's first centralised state, with its own indigenous forms of architecture and burial customs. Pyramids in Nubia were built far later, and that's why the pyramids from ancient Egypt are far more prominent. The pyramids in Sudan were also raided in modern times, and hence the depreciation. The most extensive Nubian pyramid site at Meroe, which is located between the 5th and 6th cataracts of the Nile, approximately 100 kilometres, 62 miles north of Khartoum. During the Meroitic period, over 30 queens and kings were buried there. Now, the physical proportions of Nubian pyramids differ markedly from the Egyptian edifices. They are built of stepped courses of horizontally positioned stone blocks and range approximately 6 to 30 metres in height. but rise from fairly small foundation footprints that barely exceed 8 meters in width, resulting in tall, narrow structures inclined at approximately 70 degrees. Now then, I'm going to put a picture of the Nubian or the Sudanese pyramids in the chat room. But that was actually something I wasn't aware of. Many people out there might be thinking, Kev, that's really old news. But I was quite struck by the fact that, you know, I've always been taken with the pyramid culture, the pyramid structures that are all around the planet that definitely give us some kind of hint as to a different ancient world than the one we've been told about in the past, right? But I was really surprised when I found that Sudan, a country we hear very little about, had more pyramids than Egypt. Now, I'll drop that story in the chat room at tfrlive.com chat for anyone who's interested. And we're all building up towards the arrival of my good friend, the exorcist, Mr. Bill Bean. We'll be turning down the lights after the break. We'll be getting nice and comfortable, and I'll be getting into some of the stories that will prepare us for the arrival of the spiritual warrior himself. This has been a great show so far. I always love talking about pyramids, Atlantis. Who doesn't love getting into that kind of stuff? Now then, join us after these short minutes and we'll get into the real matter tonight. Exorcism.
Real people, real radio.
Initiating the truth frequency.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
Are we on the verge of an all-out economic collapse? Is America bankrupt? That's right.
Welcome back, ladies and gents and Wookiees. You're all tuned in to tonight's Kev Baker Show with me, the maniac himself, Kev Baker. That's right. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. I'm going to be joined by my good friend, world-renowned exorcist and deliverance minister, Mr. Bill Bean, during this segment of the show. Hopefully Johnny Whistles will be here with us for hour number 2, folks. Fingers crossed. But of course, Bill Bean, he's been coming on to the show now for some time, and we always catch up with his exorcisms and the people and the places that he goes to literally fight evil. Now, in recent times when Bill's been coming on, he's been talking about not only an uptick in the spiritual warfare that's going on, the demonic activity that he's witnessing, but I've picked up on the fact that on a more physical level, the people that are being possessed by these demonic entities, they are becoming more and more physically violent during the actual deliverance prayers that Bill gives to these people as some form of relief. And I can tell you that his prayers and the work that he does bring relief. You know, I had a kind of period in my life that was strange, to say the least, and you'll all remember, long-term listeners of the show, the night that I thought I'd seen something out the corner of my eye in the house. And a lot of people describe this kind of thing as a shadow person. Well, long story short, you know, Bill worked with me. And through Bill, we worked together to get rid of any kind of evil that may be surrounding me at this time. And bear in mind that I'm not just kind of hyping this up, because I did go to Aleister Crowley's old house. We were laughing and joking and calling out the evil spirit itself. You know, and that has repercussions. That can have consequences. Whether that played a part in my health scare later on, I'm not too sure, but I certainly feel that I took something back from that property. And Bill helped me. He really did. Now, he's helped my family, and he's helped hundreds and probably thousands of people and families around America dealing with just this kind of spiritual warfare. You know, a lot of people might be forgiven for thinking that The Exorcist that movie that we all know about and the TV show that's been on more recently, like I say, people may be forgiven for thinking that that's about as close as you get to demonic possession, and it's the kind of stuff that's really confined to horror movies and stuff like that. However, the cold, harsh reality of the truth is, and it's like Joe Joseph says, you have to follow the truth wherever it takes you. And, you know, I had some problems, and it took me some time to accept the fact that we are all embroiled in this spiritual warfare at different levels. You know me, I come from a scientific nuts and bolts kind of background. I look for evidence. And that's why faith, religion, Christianity, Islam, you name it, it all seemed kind of alien to me not so long ago. I like to see evidence. I like to see the nuts and bolts. And faith, I mean, you have to put your faith in religion, right? However, I didn't start to get anywhere near to the truth until I appreciated the fact that there is a hugely spiritual aspect to all the scientific stuff that I thought was running the day. And, you know, things are becoming so bad right now that when I Googled, or when I went round Google today looking for information to support tonight's show, I was blown away, because we often talk about the increase in the spiritual activity. I get Bill to talk about it every time he comes on. People probably fed up with me saying, is it increasing, Bill? But there's a reason I'm asking them, and that's because at this time we are living in some very strange times indeed. And the boundary between this world and the next world is becoming thinner and more porous hour by hour. And I found a story today, and this is one of many. This comes from the Irish Times. A priest calls on the Catholic Church to appoint more and more exorcists. The Church is out of touch with reality and should provide at least one practitioner per diocese. Says a renowned Irish exorcist and priest has called on the Catholic Church to appoint more exorcists. Father Pat Collins, a Venetian, Dublin-based priest, said the Church needed at least one trained exorcist for each diocese, as he gets messaged daily from people looking for his help. The priest said the Catholic Church was, quote, out of touch with reality, as they are sending, quote, sufferers of possession to psychologists instead of performing rituals. Father Collins told the Irish Catholic newspaper demands for exorcism services had, quote, risen exceptionally or exponentially in recent years. What I'm finding out desperately is people who in their own minds believe, rightly or wrongly, that they're affected by an evil spirit. I think in many cases they wrongly think it, but when they turn to the Church does not know what to do with them, and they refer them on to either a psychologist or to somebody that they've heard of that is interested in this form of ministry. And they do fall between the cracks and are often not helped. Now, talking of the Catholic Church, you know, it's almost a paradox to think of some of the Catholic Church, the priests, the cardinals in there, fighting evil. Because with some of the shows we've done in the past, we certainly have come to the realization that a lot of evil, a lot of satanic evil, lies within the Vatican itself. And we're going to get a real window into that in April, folks, because there's going to be a new documentary coming out. And this documentary has been made by William Friedkin. Now, this is the guy that worked on the original Exorcist, and he's teamed up with somebody called Father Amorthi. Now, Father Amorthi is somebody who says that the devil is in the Vatican. That's right, folks. This is the Vatican's lead exorcist, and he is the featured star in an actual documentary called The Devil and Father Amorthi, and that's coming out in April on Netflix. Now, that's going to be really interesting to watch, because Father Amorthi, just like Bill Bean, he has been on the front lines of this battle with evil for a long, long time. So, what do you make of all of this, folks? And I'm going out on a limb here, but I would imagine out of the thousands listening right now, Either somebody listening has been directly affected by some kind of possession in the past, or at the very least, they're going to know of somebody in their family or one of their friends who have been at the center of one of these horrific cases in the past. Because the amount of people who are being affected by this right now, it's staggering. It's truly, truly staggering. And there's nothing new about demonic possession. This has gone on over the ages. It's just so puzzling as to why now it's becoming so and so rife. It is in our faces. And Bill, he'll be coming on to talk to us about all of this, about his new book as well, The Connection. I'm going to read a little bit here from The Connection. It's just the introduction to the actual book, just to give you a little taste of Bill before he comes along. This is your chapter 1 from The Connection. Hello and thank you for taking the time to read The Connection. I pray that my story and my triumph over tragedy will serve as a source of inspiration and motivation for you. I'm praying now that God, Yahweh, will bless every page of this book, and may he bless every word and every letter that I type. May God's blessings and favor be upon this book and all who read it. May this be your guidebook for staying super connected to God. May it also serve you in the way staying in faith, strength, and courage, aka warrior mode. I have wanted to write a 4th book for quite some time, but my busy schedule has prevented it. My current life is so much more blessed than it ever was cursed, and I will forever praise God for saving me. I'm so far removed from all the evil and negative garbage that was attached to me that I almost feel like it must have happened to someone else. Never in my wildest imagination did I ever see God working through me in this way of becoming a spiritual warrior and a defender of those who are being victimized by evil. I travel all over America helping people to become free from a variety of issues, whether it may be depression, suicidal thoughts or attempts, relationship problems, anger or emotional issues, trauma issues, curses, drug, alcohol and porn addictions, demonic attachment and demonic oppression to demonic possession. I have encountered all of it and then some. God surely has worked through me to help people from all walks of life. It's like being on an endless concert tour, as so many people are in need of my help in some way. I find that it's on the increase, and perhaps it's due to so many things taking place in our world that is leading people away from God. I ask that you put what I have just said to the test by keeping a notebook handy to document every movie, TV show, song, commercial, magazine, or news article that you watch, listen, or read. Look for blatant displays of evil through symbolism, presentations, song lyrics, and any displays thereof. I believe that you'll be shocked to find that it's rampant, widespread, and in plain sight. There has been a concerted effort over many years to brainwash people into accepting evil and negativity as normal everyday life. I have dedicated many years to these studies, along with studies of human behavior, and it's my feeling that we're in a real crisis situation in America, especially when it comes to our youth. So who is behind all of this and why? I have my opinions, and let me just say that the devil is in the details. Social engineering and the plan to destroy families goes all the way back to the 1950s. God has been taken out of everything, and just look how many families have been left destroyed as a result. The devil does everything in reverse, so he's trying to make good evil and evil good. Before I go any further, these scriptures are coming into my mind, and I must share them with you. Isaiah 5:20, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil. And Ecclesiastes 12:1, remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth. Now, the only way we can guide our youth back to God is through proper structure and guidelines in the home. The saying, quote, a family that prays together stays together is such a true saying. Many colleges, universities, and schools also play a big part in the brainwashing of our kids into not believing in God. Their general philosophy is do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. And this comes from the wicked teachings of Aleister Crowley, and it directly opposes what Jesus taught us about being selfless. John 15:13, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. And Philippians 2:3, in humanity be moved to treat one another as more important than yourself. Now that said, I know that we have to love ourselves in order to truly love others. However, there's a fine line between loving ourselves, being humble, caring and selfless, to loving ourselves so much that we become arrogant, totally self-absorbed and selfish. The latter traits are described in the Bible as vanity and haughty. The building up of one's self-importance and self-entitlement can lead to one having no drive or motivation to succeed at anything. Furthermore, it can lead to a lack of regard, empathy, and compassion for others. The devil is in the details for sure, and he loves every minute of feeling a person's selfishness and lack of compassion. I'll end my commentary with this. If both you and your family decide to truly make God first, then abundant blessings will follow. You will not only have a closer bond with God, but a closer bond between family members. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the introduction to Bill Bean's new work called The Connection. I read his first book, Dark Force, and I often say to people that Bill is one of my favourite writers. His style is fast, it's quick-paced, and you will love reading the work of the big man. You really will. And talking of the big man, I am going to try and hook him up onto the show right now. If we can't get him on Skype, I do have his number here. So hopefully, just hopefully, fingers crossed, by the joys of technology, we will be joined by Bill Bean in just a moment. And of course, for anyone out there who doesn't know who Bill is a world-renowned spiritual deliverance minister / exorcist and is known as the spiritual warrior. He's also an internationally known author, lecturer, and paranormal supernatural expert. Bean is currently featured on TLC's A Haunting series, as well as a Lifetime movie network series, I Was Possessed. So I'm going to try and get Bill on the phone now. Got his phone number here. So I'm very organised tonight, ladies and gents. I'm here on my own. Hopefully Johnny Whistles will be with us very, very shortly. But I will try and get Bill on the phone right now. So let's see how we do this. Add to the call. And we're raring to go. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing from Bill tonight. Always good to catch up on it. I hate to say his latest adventures because we're talking about people's real lives that are being affected here by demonic entities. Now, if you haven't been in that situation, I'm sure it's quite easy to scoff and laugh and kind of cast it aside, pay no attention to it. However, use that empathy. Try to put yourself in the shoes of these other people.
You've reached Bill Bean. Please leave your name, number, and message.
Well, that's never a good sign. That's never a good sign at all, but we will get Bill in just a moment. I will head on over to the social media wiretap, better known as Facebook, and message him there. But yeah, I mean, imagine, just for a moment, you know, if you haven't been in one of these situations, imagine what it must be like for somebody who doesn't even come from any kind of religious background, just a normal Joe bag of donuts, as Anthony likes to say, or a normal woman going about their day-to-day life. And bear in mind, this happens a lot to teenagers for some reason. It's almost as if there's some kind of portal, some doorway that's more ajar during your younger years. And just imagine what it must be like for those people, because that's a good way to appreciate what's going on. You know, it's only until you walk in somebody else's shoes.
Hello.
There we go. And talking of walking in somebody's shoes, Mr. Bill Bean, welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, my brother. I'm doing great, Kev. Thank you so much for having me back, brother. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on with you.
Well, it's an honor to have you, Bill. And if you could just shout into that headset there, we'll try and get you on Skype during the break so we get a better connection. But I was actually reading through some of your introduction to your new book, Bill, The Connection, and that people can get a hold of The Connection now, right? Talk to us about that.
All right, Ed, thank you so much for taking the time to give it a look. And the book is not available yet. It'll be available in a few weeks. And I'm really proud of this book, Kev. I thank God and praise God for it. And it is God-inspired because, as you know, I'm always very, very busy. And I am so committed to helping people that, sometimes days and weeks and months just go by like a blur because I'm constantly traveling. And I praise God for that as well. But I felt like I didn't have time to sit down because it requires time to sit down and put a book together and to arrange everything in the proper way to, get your message conveyed in the proper way. And that just is not a 1, 2, 3 process. However, that said, I'm thankful to God for giving me a little window of time to be able to sit down in a very short amount of time and write that book. And I am more proud of that book than any of them because it has such a strong message in it of how people can make their strong connection with God. It's a step-by-step guide. Now, I must warn everyone that it is not all warm and fuzzy. The book starts off with me describing the hellish life that I lived in and some of the things that I went through before I decided to make God first in my life. And then the transformation took place in my life. And so I share with the reader now the steps that I take in my daily life. And God has blessed me abundantly. God continues to bless me abundantly. And God will continue to bless me abundantly for these choices in making Him first. So really, that's what the book is about. I'm super proud of it. I'm super happy that I have something to present to the public that can be a great resource to them in helping them to change their life, make God first, and move forward in a great way.
Absolutely. And, just listening to the introduction there, I was reading that out. And, of course, I've read your first book, Dark Force, and you've got such a great writing style. And like you say, God works through you to get this information out there. And I think it's very timely indeed, Bill, because I was sharing with the audience a story that comes out of Ireland. And this was just published in the last 24 hours. And this was the fact that a Catholic priest over there, he's very, very worried indeed, because on an almost daily basis now, he is getting reports from people around Ireland and more worryingly around the world, Bill, of potential demonic possessions. Now, obviously, maybe not all of these are actual genuine cases. However, the point here being that this is on the increase. And I was trying to say to the people that, probably most of us haven't actually been possessed. However, to appreciate almost appreciate what it's like, we have to try and almost walk in the shoes of somebody who has been a victim of this, Bill. And there's so many of these stories right now. If people haven't been directly affected themselves, it's going to be a family member. And if it's not a family member, then it's going to be a friend, because it's everywhere right now, right?
It sure is. And I'm sorry to say that, but that is the truth. And there's a reason for this, Kev. And the reason for this is something that we've discussed many times before, and with you and Johnny Whistles and Anthony Patch, about how CERN is used as a tool to open these portals, and then the D-Wave quantum computers work in concert in conjunction with this CERN device that can literally open up these portals and doorways and loose demonic entities on the earth in mass. And all you have to do is really start to pay attention. For the listeners out there, I speak the truth. I have no agenda to disinform anyone or deceive anyone. My calling from God is a true calling. I truly love people, and God has worked through me in a magnificent way to have helped many people from all around the world. And so what I'm saying to you is absolutely the truth. That sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction, and this happens to be one of those times. And so we're living in a time like no other. We are seeing things in the supernatural on a daily basis. So people, like you said, there are people worldwide that are being affected in this way on a daily basis. We have mass UFO sightings all over the world every day. We have chemtrails in the skies in mass everywhere, all around the world. People are getting sick. Some people are dying, and they call this a flu, but I have no doubt that this is attributed to some of the chemicals and particles coming down on the masses from these chemtrails. So we have a lot of factors involved in here, and people really, really need to open their eyes and wake up to reality. I know it's difficult to deal with. It's hard to believe, but that doesn't change the fact that it's really taking place. So the only way, and my book is very timely, and I know that, again, God inspired me to do this, and he created the window for me to be able to write this book. It's very timely because some people, when they come to the realization that what I'm saying is in fact true, one can panic, because this is taking a person out of their everyday comfort zone. And the only way that a person can remain calm and have the blessed assurance that no matter what happens, it will be okay. And the only way to do that is by making God first. If one comes back to God and restores and renews the everlasting covenant, then God will have favor on that person. Person's life won't become perfect, but I guarantee you it will be transformed, and it will become a very good and a very blessed life. So for me, Kev, no matter what happens, and you're aware of some things, that there are some out there who have, this has been a difficult week for me, because there are some people out there that have launched attacks on me, severe personal attacks that are untrue, and I don't even know who these people are. I was made aware of, these people on YouTube channels making these videos up and all these things, whatever. It really doesn't matter to me, because I'm going one way, and that is forward, because God is first in my life. And if God is first and we're committed to him, then that means we're committed to excellence. And if we are committed to excellence, then that means we refuse to lose. And if God is with us, and if God is for us, then nothing or no one is going to stand against us.
Very well said. Join us for hour number 2 on the Kev Baker Show with the brilliant Phil Bean. Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started.
Truth Frequency Radio.
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
Feel it coming in the air. Yeah. The sonic symbols everywhere. Yeah. I'm addicted to the truth. I'm ready. It's a dangerous love affair. Can't be scared when it goes down. Stand for freedom here and now. Undo the spell. Only thing that's on my mind is who's gonna free this town tonight. Who's gonna free this town tonight? What's up? The new world order's going down.
Bill Bean is my special guest tonight, right here on the Kev Baker Show on your number one network, Truth Frequency Radio, www.tfrlive.com, where we say that silence is consent. And that's why you'll be struggling to ever shut me up on the topics that we cover right here on this show. And before I go back to my good friend and brother, Bill Bean, let me go to our other brother, Mr. Johnny Whistles. You might have seen him slipping into the chat room there, but he's back with me tonight. Johnny, how you doing, big man?
Doing well, Kev. Thanks very much. Yeah, these things have started to slow down a bit, and just gives me a lot more time, Kev, to think, because the way things have been going, do you know what I mean? It's just, you can't keep any concentration. There's nothing, so getting a wee bit better. But today was the day to come back on, Kev, because I put on Facebook when I woke up, and it says 2 years from today, one of my Facebook memories, and it's Mr. Bill Bean.
No way!
Yes, it was. It was Mr. Bill Bean, our spiritual warrior himself. Fantastic. So wow. I'm glad to get him back on.
This is true TFR synchronicity here. So the day you decided back is actually the 2-year anniversary of when we had Bill on the show. Johnny, that's amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I seen it, Kev. I knew, I said, oh, this is a message. This is definitely a message. Let's go on the show tonight.
It's like Joe Joseph said to me, Johnny, you know, God works in mysterious ways and very, very subtly. And he leaves little markers, little road signs about the place. And we have to be able to pick up on them firstly and then interpret them. And, you know, now that you've told me this, I really do think tonight is the night for your comeback, because we do have the aforementioned spiritual warrior with us, Mr. Bill Bean. You can find his work over at billbean.com. You can get his new book, The Connection, as well. And tonight we're getting into all things about spiritual warfare. Before the break, I was bringing up the fact that in Ireland right now, they are crying out for more and more exorcists, and that's because of the evil rising all around us. And Bill, you were great in your introduction to your book. You were telling people to take notes of things that they see in popular culture, i.e. the movies, songs, TV shows. But, you know, I think we can add something else onto that as well, Bill, because, you know, we're all part of a community here where we do like to say we're following the truth. And, you know, the truth is never, ever warm and cuddly in my kind of experience. The truth is always uncomfortable. And something else that's uncomfortable for me to say is that there are parts of our community who claim to be truthers who are just as much of the problem as any of the symbolism that we find in any of the movies, any of these dark cabal carrying out their rituals. And these characters, these agents, are hiding amongst us, Bill, on YouTube and Facebook and things like that. And that can be very disheartening indeed.
Yeah, and let me say this, Johnny, I'm so glad that you made it, and I praise God for our blessed connection. Love you both dearly, and truly is always great to be on with you guys, because this show, the Kev Baker Show, is about truth. And like Kev said, sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. And, you know, the uncomfortable truth is presented, but I can tell you this, that there is a flip side to the uncomfortable truth. And the uncomfortable flip side, or the comfortable flip side to the uncomfortable truth, is that no matter what, no matter how bad it is, no matter how bad it will get, if God is with us and for us, he will make a way for us, and he'll help us to get through those bad times. So, yes, things are difficult in life these days, and we see a lot of disturbing things. However, we can also give you something to fill you, and that is God and his word and his promise and his power. And when we activate the mighty power of God within us, look out. There's nothing that we can't do, and that makes us armed and dangerous against the devil and his demons. And, you know, we touched on this a few minutes ago, about certain people out there who, and they know who they are, and we know who some of them are, that are not working for God or with God, and they don't want to give anybody any hope or help them to move forward in any way. They want to poison their spirit with the bad news every single day without any hope, or you might as well slit your wrist if you listen to some of these people, because they just constantly pump you with the bad news, and there is no hope or help or nothing you can do to change it, and everybody's going to be dead soon and all this. And I say it's garbage, and this comes from the pits of hell. And so I want people, all of you out there that are listening, hear these words and take into consideration what I'm saying. And if you're listening to someone out there like that, or you're watching their YouTube channels or whatever, just take a step back and say, what am I doing here? Because I'm filling myself with negativity because this person is giving me a negative message every single day. And not only are some of these people giving the negative message every single day, they're getting paid to give that negative message every single day. So when God's in it, we can fill our spirit and have blessed assurance that he is with us and for us, and that gives us a hope and a help and the ability to move forward. But when the devil's in it, it all comes down to that frequency and vibration. And when people are taking in the low frequency and low vibration of the negative and the bad junk, and the world's going to end today and all that kind of stuff, there's nothing good in that. Only darkness and despair can come out of that. So there's no way to move forward.
Absolutely. And that's very, very wise words from Bill there. And Johnny, I'll bring you in here because this is a tightrope that a show like ours walks, because there's a fine line between us being one of these doom and gloom merchants and also being a show that's informative and being a show that offers solutions. And I think we really try hard, Johnny, don't we, to try and offer at least some glimmer of hope. Even if it's been an hour-long episode on the darkest of topics, we still try to give that optimistic view to it, don't we? Because it's important not to leave people feeling helpless, feeling worthless, John, isn't it?
Well, exactly, because I've never ever thought of our show being anything like doom and gloom, Kev, because the whole difference, I think, from the doom and gloom mongers that are out there is we bring solutions. People like Bill, the man himself, who gives us solutions of how to get rid of these things, how to get out of these things. So as far as doom and gloom mongers go, they can keep to themselves, because I think KBS gives a different whole point of view about that, Kev. I never ever see us as doom and gloom.
Absolutely. And, I almost fell in.
No, I don't see you guys that way at all. I see your show is very informative and uplifting, and you certainly allow, myself and others like me to have a forum to be able to plant good seeds with people in truth.
Absolutely. And, I was almost one of these people, one of these YouTube channels that fell down a very dark rabbit hole, because once you start getting a certain level of subscribers on there, you become very attractive to third-party companies that will come in and they offer you the sun and the moon, and they offer you a big signing-up fee, a couple of $1,000 right there into your PayPal account. But there's a flip side to that, and they gave away the flip side when they were trying to sell this project on me. And they only say they wanted 10% or so of my YouTube income bill. But what they wanted me to do was move away from caring about what content I was putting out, just to putting out content. Just take those big, hyped-up headlines and make videos between 5 and 10 a day. And also what they would do after a short period of time was, and I'm not using any channel names here, folks, I'm not grassing anybody in. However, it's quite easy to spot these channels when I kind of spell out the MO. Watch for between 5 and 10 videos a day. And watch for thousands of clicks within minutes of these videos going up. Because these companies, and the one in question that I was speaking to, they told me how this works. They pay companies over in South Korea and China to click videos. So when we use the term clickbait, that's literally what a lot of these channels who are claiming to be helping you are doing. They're doing nothing more than making money. And Bill, I suppose it was inevitable that the devil, the evil, that greed would make its way into this genuine truther community.
Yeah, and it's sad. It really is. And you know, I would personally, what has taken place, you know, with me in this last week, I would have never known any of this because I'm always so busy. I'm not watching anybody else's channels. I don't see anybody else's Facebook pages or anything like that. I'm always busy. But I got a message from someone. God bless him, too. The man's name is Ronnie Davis. And I could call him a friend and a brother now because I truly appreciate him reaching out to me and making me aware that there are some people out there, and this one woman in particular whom I've never met in my life, never talked with, don't know anything, don't even know she existed in the world, until Ronnie Davis made me aware of this, that, you know, this woman was making videos about me on YouTube and just absolutely trashing me. I mean, she was making videos about debating me, saying that what I was saying about the scriptures in the Bible. She was saying that I'm a liar, I'm a deceiver, I'm a devil, you know, I'm an agent for the devil, leading people away from God. I am dumb. I have an 8th grade education. I'm uneducated. I made a lady cry in church because I raised my voice too loud, and it just went on and on. This woman attacked me in every way that you could think of. And again, I've never talked to this person, never met her in my life, and I couldn't believe it when Ronnie made me aware of, she made like 5 videos and posted them on YouTube and has one of these channels that you were just talking about backing her. So they're getting, you know, lots of people over there to see her videos. So I did contact YouTube, and they took the videos down. And I have threatened legal action against this person. If she tries to do it again, then I'm going to be forced to take legal action because this is slander and defamation of character. I mean, this is just absolutely, if you don't agree with someone, okay, you can agree to disagree. But when you start attacking them personally, and some of the vile things, I just was sent another video that she had made that I wasn't aware of. And I'll have to send it to you, Kev. I mean, it is disturbing how this woman has just torn me to shreds in a personal way. And it's unfathomable how someone could do that. If they've studied anything about me, if they've listened, you know, I've given over 2,000 interviews now. I've been on your show many times now. If they just went to the archives and listened to me on your show one time and how I talk, and I talk about the people that God works for me to help, you know, all over the world. And if people like this would take a second and realize that I am truly a man of God and a warrior for God and have done things that are miraculous, it's the power of God that has worked through me to do these things, then maybe they wouldn't dare to even consider to say these things. However, that is going to help many more people, because when this book gets out, it's going to touch and reach lots and lots of people, and it's going to be life-changing for some people. Perhaps the devil is in the details here, that he would work through these disinformation agents to go out there and start their attacks on me before this book gets out. I find it very, very interesting, the timing of this.
Oh, there's no coincidence there, brother. No coincidence at all. I mean, this is obviously a very timed operation. And I use operation because these are paid agents. This is like a military psychological operation that's underway. And I want to congratulate you, Mr. Bean, because you haven't really made it in YouTube land until there's trolling videos out there about you. So congratulations, man. You can now say for a fact you're definitely having an effect. But I like this term, the devil is in the details, because let's pay these characters no more attention tonight. They're not even worth it. And the devil in the details, it's going to be more than obvious this coming weekend, Mr. Bean, because This is a time of year that I'm hastened to use the word get excited about, but I always look for. And that's the Super Bowl ritual that's going to be coming up. Now, in your introduction, you were telling people, take a note of the occasions where you see the symbology, the messaging that basically kills God. And this Super Bowl, I'm not calling it a halftime show, it's the Super Bowl ritual. That's one of these mega ceremonies, Bill, where it's there for the whole world to see the symbology, the lyrics, the characters involved. It's replete with this satanic message.
Yeah, it's just absolutely, and I've warned people against this, Kevin. I've been doing so ever since these individuals decided that they were no longer going to, some of them decided that they were no longer going to stand for the national anthem, and they were going to, create these problems in this way to where this creates a social destabilization as well, because you have, and I hate to say it this way, and I don't want to judge anybody, but there are people out there who don't feel good about themselves or their life. And so they see sports, and I used to be one of these people, by the way. They see sports as a way to live vicariously through someone else. And so when that person or that team achieves the victory, you feel that you're part of that and you're achieving the victory with them. So you're vicariously living through that athlete and or team. And this is where the idol worship creeps into this, because, God tells us, don't do this idol worship. Don't partake in this, because a person can get so immersed into something like this, it becomes an addiction, just like a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction or whatever addiction it may be. A person can become addicted. And I was one of those people many years ago. I truly was. And you can't, when you're addicted to something and when you're so entrenched in something, you can't see it for what it is. People from the outside who are not involved in it or addicted to it can see it. But when the person's in it, they just can't see it. They just continue to go with it. So if an athlete or athletes are making these rebellious stands against the government and literally thumbing their nose to the men and women in the armed forces who put their lives on the line, and some gave their lives for the freedoms of this country. Now, look, we know the truth as well about the black ops and all this kind of stuff, and it's very real. But there are a lot of good and decent men and women who serve in our armed forces who are not a part of that and who are committed to doing what is good and what is right. And so for those people, it's a real disservice and injustice for these athletes to, literally thumb their noses at them by not standing for the national anthem. And then for the league, the NFL, which I call the National Felon League, and people should really look into that, what I'm saying there, because there are some men on those football fields that should be in prisons. They shouldn't be playing a sport making millions of dollars. They are sex offenders and drug dealers and involved in gangs, and they should be in prison. And yet there they are out there making millions of dollars. So again, in my day, as a child and coming up, to be in my preteen years and then into my teens, sports, that was the outlet for me, because I suffered, terribly in my childhood, and I saw sports as my escape. And I became a great athlete, and there were great athletes back in that era who stood for what was good and for what was right. And they had an effect on me in a positive way, because some of the traits that I have in my life now are attributed to some of those great men. And there are no such role models. There are only those that sow the bad seeds and lead the young people in the wrong direction. So this is why, this is a very large part of why we have what we have in this country, where it's our youth are just totally rebellious, and they just, you can't talk to them about anything. And it is attributed to the guidance that they're getting from some of these athletes, entertainers, Hollywood, all of this. You can't find anybody that is good and positive that in those industries that are leading the young people in a good and positive way.
And Bill,
and
we've got one
all by
perfect
design.
example. We've got one perfect example right now that we can use when we look at the youth of today. And obviously, I'm not casting every single young person into this bracket, but think of this Tide Pod challenge. Children sitting, eating washing detergent. Now, I mean, if this doesn't suggest to people that there's a problem with this generation that's coming up just now, and this problem's been bred, A, out of the education system, and B, like you say, Bill, there is no role models, and even the family social setup's been broken for a lot of these people.
Kev, this is all by design. This is all by design, and this plan was hatched in the mid-1950s. And as much as I hate to say this, because, I'm a musician and I used to play in rock bands and all that kind of stuff, but I've also done a lot of study on this, and I'm firmly convinced that what I'm about to say is true, that there was a destabilization plan hatched and put into place back in the mid-50s, and this started with rock and roll because it was part of rebellion. So the plan was that if you could create a sound based on frequency and vibration and the lyric, which would be suggestive, then you could program that into the minds of the youth and get them to rebel against their parents. And that's exactly what happened, Kev. If you really study the timeline, which I have, if you really study it, from the time that rock and roll was formed, from Bill Haley and the Comets, which they had that song Rock Around the Clock, and then, on to Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard and Elvis and then the Beatles, this was all a gigantic psyop, a mind-op that would infiltrate the homes. This would be the way to destabilize the American family. And once you cause such destabilization, there's no turning back. So all one would have to do, for anybody out there listening, you don't have to believe a word I'm saying here. Research it for yourself. And you'll see the trend and the pattern starting once rock music came on the scene. And once that happened, families, little by little, were starting to have cracks and problems. And then it led to the divorce rates going sky high and the single-family homes. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the devil was very clever in his tactics, and this was a very subtle and clever tactic to destroy the American family, and then all families, for that matter of fact. Everybody around the world that's taking in these kinds of things in youth, were inspired in some way. Now, I'm not saying that all families were destroyed, but I'm saying that a large number were inspired to rebel, and then once drugs were introduced to this, forget it. That was the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. But it was a very calculated agenda to carry this plan out to destabilize the families and lead the children away in rebellion. So then, when drugs were introduced into this, which, came in the era of the Beatles and then the Grateful Dead and all these, they were, and I do believe that there were black ops, in the alphabet agencies that were involved in this, in distributing drugs to the kids in those crowds. And again, this was all by design to capture the minds of the youth. And it worked. So we are where we are now as a society because of what took place then. So it has been a very long and calculated plan, and it has taken some time, but here we are. So I say in my new book, The Connection, that the only way, and I've met a lot of wonderful, good and decent kids out there, young men and young ladies, that I feel have a very bright future because they have the proper guidance and structure in their home. So this must start in the home. And I always pray that, families stay intact where the husband and the wife are together in the home and they can provide proper guidance to the children to where, they never have to get into these dark areas. And I have seen that, Kev. I have. I've seen it in some families, and it makes my heart feel good.
We'll be right back with more from Bill Bean, and I'll get more into this on the other side. Brilliant show tonight. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is rebel music. Get upset and get.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
No hate, no hype, no fear. Real people, real radio.
Wars are psychological just as much as they are physical, just as much as they are economic. Listen up.
We tax you your peace of mind. We construct lies to make them true. We tell it, we sell it, you buy it, I get mine. There is no greater money maker than the feel we sell to you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Moving into the final part of tonight's amazing Kev Baker Show, right here on Truth Frequency Radio. We've got our very special guest, Bill Bean. He's here with us live tonight, all the way from the US. He's got his new book out, The Connection. You can find details about that at his website, billbean.com. Bill, is there any other websites you want to give a shout out to, and how can people get a hold of your new book, sir?
Well, and again, I thank everybody out there for listening in, and Kev, thank you again, and Johnny, you guys are just the best, and I really appreciate you always support me and having me on. And for anybody out there that wants to read this book, and I highly recommend it. I never push anything on anybody, and I've never pushed any of my previous books on anyone. But in this case, I am strongly urging people to get a copy of this book because it can be life-changing, and I thank God and praise God for it. So it's not available yet. It'll be available in a few weeks, and then it'll be available at billbean.net or billbeanministries.com. And also, Stellium Books, a big thank you to Annette at Stellium. They will be available through Stellium and probably Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com and places like that. So there will be many resources and many ways to get a copy of this book. And if you forget any of the sites that I've just said, just punch my name into Google and you'll get the phone book. So there's always a way to contact me. And for those out there who are in need of spiritual deliverance, if you feel like you're, under demonic oppression, or if you feel that you're cursed, or you feel like you're possessed at times, and usually a person that's under possession won't contact me. It is a loved one or someone close to them that will contact me, because when people are under a full demonic possession, they have no recollection of what they have done anyway. So usually it is a family member or a loved one that will contact me on behalf of that person. But I just want people to know out there that though you may be suffering, you're not alone. And though I'm very busy, I'm never too busy to help someone. So I thank God and praise God for this blessing and this calling, and in the way that He works through me to help people. And so, if you're in a bad way, don't hesitate to contact me, and I will get back to you, or my assistant Melinda will get back to you, and then we'll set up a way to get to you, and God will do the rest. So I'm just very grateful and very thankful to God to be working through me in this way to help so many.
And we're really, really thankful to God for giving us you, Bill, because you are literally helping so many people. And myself and Johnny can back me up in his own words here. I mean, we absolutely love having you on this show. We speak to so many various guests, but I think, John, Bill coming on the show, it's always a highlight for both of us, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Kev, the thing about when Bill comes on, I don't know about you, but it's a whole different feeling from any other shows that we do have. Bill just brings this. He's a brightness, Kev. He's a brightness in a dark, dark place, and that's what I love about him. I love having him on.
A very uplifting energy indeed. And my mum, she would absolutely testify to that as well. Somebody else who Bill has personally helped. And before the break, we were talking about the influence of music on the young people of today and how that's playing into this world of darkness that we are surrounded by right now. And I mentioned the fact, or I should mention the fact, we're going to have a very special guest coming up on the 27th of this month, February. And his name is Mark Devlin. Now, Mark's been on the show before, but this is absolutely his field of expertise because he was on the show before talking to us about the PSYOP 60s. And he's coming back to talk all about his second installment and all of his research into musical truth. Because there's so much more to music, the bands behind it, and the reasons that it is the way it is, that it will literally make your mind boggle. And it does. It shapes our minds and our opinions and our beliefs, no matter how much we like to deny that. On a subconscious level, music, vibration, it's a very powerful tool indeed. And Bill, that's why I think, the music industry, television, stuff like that, this is the number one weapon that people have to A, identify, and then B, get away from, because it's having such a detrimental effect.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And again, I want to thank you both, and thank you for your kind words. And I want to say hi to your mom, Pearl, out there. And I look forward to the day, and I hope that it'll be sometime in the future to where my wife and I can actually take a trip over to Scotland, and we could do a live show together. So I believe that will happen at some point in the future, and I praise God for it.
Absolutely. And, Bill, I was blown away the other day, right? Because we do, and I mentioned during your introduction that we're to take note of all of the times that we see God basically killed off in music and TV shows. And the other day, I'm an ex-military guy, so obviously I like the military-style TV shows. And this is a drama, and it's called Valor. Now, it features a unit in America with helicopters. They go and do daring raids. You get the picture. But something really, really different happened during one of these episodes. They were getting ready to fly a special forces team out to Afghanistan or one of these countries. And the special forces sergeant paused for a moment when they were getting onto the helicopter. And do you know why he paused, Bill? He paused because he wanted to take a moment in prayer. Now, while I was watching this during this TV show, it struck me how very few times we see anything like that in a TV show. Yet when I was in the military, God is a very, very big part of a soldier's life. And just just to see that, it was amazing, Bill. It really was. I mean, whether religious.
I pray that we can get back to more of that, Kevin. I pray that a new day is coming, and I'm really optimistic about this. I truly believe that a great and terrible day is coming, and that there will be a great purging on this earth, and then a brand new day, a brand new chapter, a brand new season will come. And I do believe that those who remain faithful to God and keep God first will be okay through all these times and tribulations that are here and that are coming. It really doesn't matter, because God will make a way for us. And I pray that he purges every single evildoer off of this planet. And again, they know who they are, and we know who some of them are as well. And may God purge every one of them out of here. And may there be a new day and a new chapter and a new season in peace for all.
Oh, absolutely. Amen to that. Now, Bill, it would be remiss of me if I didn't ask you about any of your latest, and I hate using this word, adventures, because this is so real and so horrible, some of the actual cases that you have to go and deal with. But, I mean, what's the kind of, since we last spoke, has there been anything big happen in the world of Bill Bean?
Nothing of the magnitude of the last time, and not to diminish anything from anybody that's having problems, because I've certainly dealt with many people since that time. but I wouldn't put it in the category of what we had previously spoken about. And I do have something interesting to share with you, is that several weeks ago, I was in New York City, and I was right down in the Soho part of Manhattan that's on Broadway. And while in there helping the client, I heard this copter, and it was hovering over the building the entire time that I was in there. And I was in there for several hours. And when I came out, I was waiting on and I give a shout out to Eddie there in New York. He's got a transport service, and I drove into New Jersey into a place called Secaucus, and met this man, and he picked me up from there and took me into because it's very, very difficult to park in certain parts of New York City, and I'm not a fan of some of those parking garages because they really don't take great care with your vehicle. So I had this man who has a service that drove me in to where I needed to go. And so when I was done, I was waiting for him to pick me up, and I stepped out of the front door of the building, and I looked up, and there it was. I mean, it was hovering. Portion of it was over the building, and a portion of it was directly over me as I stepped out. And when I got into the vehicle, which the vehicle came just a few minutes later, I could hear the copter over us as we were probably 10 minutes into the ride and still heard the copter, and didn't see it once we got to it back into Secaucus to where he took me back to my vehicle. But it was very, very interesting that this guy, and this happens a lot, and as crazy as this may sound, it's been going on for many years, that these copters seem to monitor or follow me at different points. I mean, I know it sounds absolutely insane, but it's the truth. And I have photographs and video of these types of events that have been going on since 1995. And there are times that I sit in my office, and it could be late at night, sometimes 3:30 a.m. or 4 a.m. or later, and these things will come over, and sometimes they're so low they rattle the windows. And so whomever that may be, for whatever reasons, again, I don't care, because God is with me and for me. Therefore, no one or nothing could stand against me, and they know that, because I truly believe that whomever this is, if they could have taken me out a long time ago, I think they would have. But I believe it's the power of God that is on me and within me that, A, keeps me safe, and B, keeps me very strong to where it repels these types of forces. And I praise God for that.
There's a very important message here for everyone, because, Bill, unbeknown to you, we've got somebody in the chat room, Duncan Campbell, another guy who comes on the show regularly, like yourself, and he's dabbled in exorcisms in the past himself. Now, he was sharing with me just the last time he was on the show that he too has had experiences with helicopters. Now, I find that more than coincidental. We've got two people working in this field of fighting evil, and the black helicopters is, well, it's connected to both of them. And I think that should serve as an example to anyone out there, just the level of threat that the dark cabal put on people that are doing God's work.
It's true. It's very, very true. I've been to other states as well. I've been to, to California, to Florida, every state in the country. But I mean, I've been to some of these places and I've had these copters come over me. It's unbelievable. You would look and say, what is this? Why is this happening? But I mean, I assure you what I'm saying is true. I have documentation, both in video and photos, of this taking place. And it's been taking place on a regular basis since 1995.
Wow. And Johnny, I'll bring you in here because Duncan's in the chat room, as you can see, and he's talking about almost every day he's plagued by these helicopters. And I think this is a really key piece of information, because I do think this highlights just the kind of level of threat that they place, and when I say they, I talk about the cabal, the Illuminati, whatever name you want to put on them, this evil force, they obviously fear people working for God. Or else, Johnny, why else would they plague them with the black helicopters? There'd be no reason, right? They would just ignore people like Bill.
Yeah, the thing about this, Kev, when I hear about the black helicopters and things, I mean, it's not like Bill doesn't know. The first helicopter told him that they're watching him. It's the same with Duncan in the chat there. So why they keep sending these things out? Is it just a message that we're still watching you? Do you know what I mean? I don't get it, because helicopters are not going to stop Bill. And they're not going to stop Duncan. They're not going to stop any of us, Kev. So why they're sending these things out? Just as a reminder, it really baffles me.
And you know, Bill, I think what Johnny is talking about there, in my mind, anyway, my opinion would be that one time with the helicopter back at the start, it wasn't enough. And any way they can to try and deter you, to try and put you off this path that you're on, I think that's why they probably keep on turning up.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, and perhaps, now again, this could be stretching it because I don't know the answer on this, but perhaps maybe some of these copters aren't copters, and maybe they are camouflage for something else. And shapeshifters, we're going out on a limb when we say this because I don't know that to be true. But I wonder, just like with the chemtrails, I have looked through binoculars at some of these objects, because isn't it interesting that when you see these big trails in the sky, you can never see what is making them. One, everybody assumes it's a plane, but you can never see the plane. And I've looked through binoculars and never saw any structure of a plane. I've also watched some YouTube videos to where people, you know, had very powerful zooms, and they're zooming in, and whatever is making the trail does not look like a conventional airplane. So, you know, you have to think this. If, in fact, these chemtrails are making people sick, and they do have these properties such as aluminum oxide and barium and these sleeping agents in them that make people drowsy and all this kind of stuff, if, in fact, this is true, wouldn't the people, if they're human beings and carrying out the missions, wouldn't they worry about their families being at risk and themselves being at risk? What prevents them from getting sick or getting lung cancer from breathing in particles of aluminum? So is it really human beings that are making these trails? And, I mean, you have to wonder this.
You know, Bill, this is one show where that kind of thought isn't so far out there, because I often talk about the royal family and the fact that there's reports of them shape-shifting between human form and some kind of evil reptilian form. And I think it's brilliant that you've touched upon this, because even Johnny here, Johnny, you're talking about maybe the helicopters being projected psychically into the minds of these people. And that's definitely the technology out there to do that. But also, you know, you bring up a really good point with these chemtrail planes as well, because I used to go through a phase of filming them all and putting them on YouTube, Bill. And I had a pretty powerful camera, and you're bang on, because sometimes these really high altitude ones, you can see the line being laid down, but there's nothing in front of it. And it does
2
make
days ago, Kev, my wife and I saw, and it was probably around, I'd say 11 a.m. in the morning, and we saw seven trails side by side, and then one that crossed them in an X pattern. Now, just think about what I said there. And FAA rules and regulations and standards. It's impossible by those regulations and standards for that to be taking place.
Absolutely. And you think about this as well, Bill. I mean, I'll go out on a limb too, since you're doing that here. And we're talking uncomfortable truths tonight. And it's uncomfortable enough, this barium and aluminium, or aluminum, as the Americans like to say, all of that going into our systems, breathing this in. However, there's a really possible or a potential darker truth that we could uncover, Bill, Johnny. And that is the fact that with portals to other dimensions being opened by CERN and by D-Wave and probably other agencies and companies out there that we're not too aware of, I wonder, Bill, if they're actually changing the environment for these entities that are about to come into this realm, because everything's vibration and we're only separated by a very, very thin boundary indeed. And obviously you can testify to that boundary becoming more and more porous all of the time. These demonic entities gaining a foothold in our reality, but having to do so by hijacking the body of an individual. Perhaps we're looking at the terraforming of the planet, Bill, where they won't even need to take over a host anymore. They'll just be able to actually reside here.
I totally agree with that, and it really is thought-provoking. And boy, oh boy, are we ever going into a direction that I didn't think we would go tonight. These are things that we've never really discussed, and all the times that I've been on your show, we've kind of not gone into these areas, and I'm glad that we are, because it needs to be talked about. It's truth, and people need to be aware of it. Now, all this said, this is why it is so essential for people to keep God first, because even with these atmospheric conditions and changes and properties that are being sprayed into the air, if we can keep God first and bind and rebuke all that garbage and not take it in by asking God to literally make us impenetrable to any of this stuff coming into us, these Morgellons and all this other junk, then we will make it through, and no matter what happens and who does what, who tries to do what, the favor and the protection of God will be upon us, and we will be able to move forward. But I totally agree with you that maybe it is a transformation to suit those life forms, because if you take a look, really study, and I urge people, start looking up. Get your heads out of your phones and start looking up and see what is above you. The sun doesn't look the same anymore. The moon doesn't look the same anymore. The skies at night are bright because the moon is illuminating the chemicals that are in the sky at night. The sun looks whiter now because of the chemicals being sprayed. So take a good look at what is going on above you, and then come back to God. Make him first and allow him to have favor on you and protection over you and your family.
Absolutely, Bill. And Johnny Whistles, you know, tonight's second hour of the show here, it's just been absolutely amazing information. And Bill's right. These are topics that we haven't really touched on before, but in true KBS fashion, we follow the information, we follow our guts, we follow our hearts, John, and we've ended up at this uncomfortable truth that we visited before, that literally, forget geoengineering, we could be talking terraforming the planet for other entities.
Yeah.
I'm
in agreement with that.
Yeah, I'm too, Bill, because why would you ruin this amazing, beautiful planet with the people on it? It can only be for something else that's to come for it. I mean, there's no other reason for this, honestly. It just baffles me why we're poisoning ourselves. I mean, even the people that are spraying this are poisoning themselves and they don't even see it. I just wonder if they've got people that far dumbed down now. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what it seems like. We're all dumbed down to the stage that we don't even see what's happening right in front of us.
You've hit the nail on the head, John. And I totally agree with you 100%. And this is why it is very important on the agenda list for those who are in league with the devil and carrying out his agenda, to keep the people distracted, keep them immersed in all the gadgets with the cell phones and all the social media and all the entertainment industry and, you know, Hollywood and the music and all that stuff, because you're keeping these people distracted. So when you can distract people in this manner, you have them right where you want them. You have them under control. And so it's very easy to implement the agenda, as long as it's not affecting them, and it's that mentality of, well, it's not bothering me, that's not affecting me, so I don't care. You have people in, some of the major cities now, including Baltimore, where I was born and grew up, and in that area, the general area, and you have people in some of these cities that they see people getting attacked or women getting raped or children being taken off the streets. Nobody lifts a finger to do anything. Nothing. There was a man in Philadelphia a few years ago that was having a heart attack. He went into the emergency room. Not only would they not help him, they made him go sit down and wait in the emergency room, in the waiting room.
Oh, God.
While he was in the waiting room having another heart attack, he died in there and was robbed. They took everything from him, his watches, his wallet, his shoes, everything. So this is what we are immersed in now. And this is all by design. And this is why it's so urgent for people to come back to God, because it's only by the power and the favor of God that we will get through these things.
Absolutely. And Bill, we're almost out of time, but I would be honoured if you could come back with us again next month. I'll organise a date with you after the show. I'm really enjoying our regular get-togethers. And it seems to me that every conversation we have now, we're pushing that boundary just a little bit further. We're going a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole. And the uncomfortable truth is becoming very, very much clearer. And that is the fact that we are all embroiled in a spiritual battle, whether we appreciate it or not. And it's thanks to the bravery of individuals like Bill Bean out there, who's willing to put himself and his reputation on the line to help individuals. We're now living in a world where you can literally be put in jail for feeding homeless people. Literally put in jail for helping another human being.
Yeah.
And that should tell you how far society has slipped. I want to thank Bill for his time tonight and for all the work that he does for so many people out there. I want to thank all of you individually for tuning in tonight. And finally, and last but not least, I want to thank Johnny Whistles, because it honestly feels like Johnny brought my mojo back with him tonight. I'm loving this. I'll be back tomorrow on the Anthony Pat Show with the SGT Report. Sean will be joining us. Freaky Friday as well. And I'll be back next week on KBS. Until then, wherever you are, make it T, F, and R.
And didn't touch that dial.
There it is.